What if the wisest man in history, the one blessed with divine wisdom, wealth beyond measure and unrivaled power, ended his life in regret? How does a ruler who had everything lose sight of the very foundation of his success? This is the story of King Solomon, a man who started with God's favor but strayed into spiritual ruin. At the height of his reign, Solomon's wisdom made him legendary. Rulers from around the world sought his counsel. He built the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, fulfilling his father David's greatest dream. His kingdom prospered beyond imagination, but behind the splendor, a slow and dangerous shift took place. Marrying foreign princesses for political gain, he let idolatry seep into his life. The man who once sought God's wisdom began to chase pleasure, wealth, and power until they consumed him. As we uncover the final chapter of Solomon's life, we'll explore the critical choices that led to his downfall. Was he able to find redemption, or did he leave behind only regret? More importantly, what can his story teach us about avoiding the same traps? If you find this story thought-provoking, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful biblical stories and life-changing lessons straight to you. Now let's step into the heart of Solomon's journey and witness the moments that shaped his fate. Solomon's glorious reign and divine favor. King Solomon began his reign with extraordinary promise, ascending to the throne as the chosen son of David. Unlike many rulers who sought power for personal gain, Solomon's heart initially leaned toward wisdom and righteousness. In 1 Kings 3:5, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream at Gibeon and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Instead of requesting riches, military might, or a long life, Solomon made a humble yet profound request. "Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" 1 Kings 3:9. This desire for wisdom above all else pleased the Lord, and God granted Solomon more than he had asked for, unparalleled wisdom, as well as riches and honor beyond any other king of his time. 1 Kings 3:10 through 14. Solomon's wisdom became evident almost immediately. One of the most well-known demonstrations of his discernment is the case of the two women who both claimed to be the mother of the same infant. 1 Kings 3:16-28. With divine insight, Solomon proposed to cut the child in two, knowing the true mother would rather give up her claim than see her child harmed. This judgment astounded the people of Israel, confirming that God's wisdom was indeed with their king. His intellect was not limited to governance. Solomon's knowledge extended to nature, philosophy, and the arts. 1 Kings 4:29-30 states, "God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore." Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East, and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He authored 3,000 proverbs and over 1,000 songs. 1 Kings 4:32, covering themes of life, leadership, and faith. His renown spread far beyond Israel, attracting scholars and rulers from distant lands. One of the most famous visitors to test Solomon's wisdom was the Queen of Sheba, 1 Kings 10:1-13. She came bearing costly gifts and difficult questions, and upon hearing his responses, she declared, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true, but I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth, you have far exceeded the report I heard." 1 Kings 10:6-7. This encounter reinforced Solomon's status as the most blessed and divinely favored king of his time. Yet, Solomon's greatest achievement was not his wisdom or his wealth, but his role in building the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem. 1 Kings 6. This monumental task, which his father David had longed to complete, became a reality under Solomon's reign. Constructed with the finest materials, including cedar from Lebanon, gold, silver, and bronze, the temple took 7 years to complete and stood as the spiritual heart of Israel. 1 Kings 8:10-11 describes how, at its dedication, the glory of the Lord filled the temple, signifying God's approval and presence among his people. During this time, Israel experienced unprecedented prosperity and peace. 1 Kings 10:23-24 states, King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. The whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. His strategic control of trade routes between Egypt and Mesopotamia brought immense wealth into the kingdom. 1 Kings 10:14 records that Solomon's annual gold income alone was 666 talents, approximately 25 tons. His throne, made of ivory and overlaid with gold, was unlike anything seen before. 1 Kings 10:18-20. Even silver was considered of little value in his days, 1 Kings 10:21, illustrating the sheer opulence of his reign. However, with great blessings came great responsibility. The Lord's promises to Solomon were conditional. If he remained faithful, his reign would be long and prosperous. But if he turned away from God, disaster would follow. As Solomon basked in his unprecedented success, he began to drift away from the very wisdom that had set him apart. The seeds of his downfall were beginning to take root, unseen by those who only beheld his grandeur. How did the wisest man on earth fail to heed his own wisdom? What led to his downfall? Let's explore the crucial moments that changed everything. The gradual decline, compromises, and disobedience. Solomon's reign, once marked by divine wisdom and unparalleled prosperity, slowly began to unravel. Though he had been blessed beyond measure, his heart started to drift from the God who had granted him everything. The first signs of decline were subtle, small compromises that over time led to devastating consequences. One of Solomon's greatest missteps was his pursuit of political alliances through marriage. 1 Kings 11:1-2 states, King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. At first, these marriages may have seemed like strategic moves to strengthen Israel's political influence. However, they soon became Solomon's spiritual downfall. He accumulated 700 wives and 300 concubines, 1 Kings 11:3, and their influence led him to build altars and high places for their gods, including Ashtoreth, Chemosh, and Molech, 1 Kings 11:5-8. These actions directly violated God's commandments and introduced idolatry into the heart of Israel. Beyond his spiritual compromises, Solomon also began amassing excessive wealth and military power. Deuteronomy 17:16-17 had explicitly warned Israel's kings against multiplying horses, silver, and gold for themselves. Yet Solomon did exactly that. His annual income in gold alone was 666 talents for 1 Kings 10:14, and he imported chariots and horses from Egypt, despite God's warning not to return there. 1 Kings 10:26-28. What had begun as divine blessing had now turned into indulgence and self-reliance. As Solomon's devotion to God waned, his kingdom began to suffer. The unity and peace Israel had once enjoyed started to fracture. Enemies that had long been subdued, Hadad the Edomite, Rezon of Damascus, and Jeroboam, rose against Solomon, 1 Kings 11:14-26. These adversaries were not merely political threats, but signs of God's growing displeasure. Despite 2 direct encounters with the Lord, warning him to remain faithful, 1 Kings 9:6-9, 11:9-11, Solomon continued down his path of compromise. His divided heart led to a divided kingdom, setting the stage for Israel's eventual downfall. The wisest man on earth had failed to heed his own wisdom. The same king who once declared, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," Proverbs 9:10, had allowed fear of loss, ambition, and desire to erode his relationship with God. How could a man so blessed fall so far? The answer lies in the slow, subtle drift from God's commands, one compromise at a time. Psychological factors behind Solomon's fall. Solomon's decline was not just a matter of political alliances or disobedience, it was a battle within his own heart and mind. The wisest man in history did not fall overnight. His downfall was slow, a gradual erosion of faith, shaped by internal struggles that remain relevant even today. It began with success. He had built the temple, expanded Israel's influence, and gained the admiration of rulers from distant lands. But somewhere along the way, his dependence on God weakened. The humility that had once defined him was overshadowed by pride. His accomplishments, his wisdom, his wealth, they became his identity, and he started to believe in his own greatness. The man who once wrote, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall," had allowed that very pride to take root in his heart. At first, his compromises seemed justifiable. His marriages to foreign princesses strengthened alliances, ensuring peace. Perhaps he thought he could manage the risks, that he could remain faithful to God while making room for the beliefs of others. But faith doesn't erode in a single moment. It weakens with each small concession. One altar to a foreign god became many. One act of tolerance became a habit. Before long, Solomon was no longer leading Israel in worship of the one true God. He was facilitating idolatry within its borders. Beneath it all, there was a deeper desire, the need for approval. Solomon was not just a king, he was a statesman, an intellectual, a man of influence. The world admired his wisdom, and he wanted to be seen as an enlightened, inclusive ruler. But the pursuit of human approval often comes at the cost of divine obedience. He had sought the respect of other nations, but in doing so, he lost the favor of the one who had placed him on the throne. His love for the world's recognition eclipsed his love for God. And then came indulgence. Ecclesiastes, believed to be written in his later years, reveals a man who had tasted every pleasure, only to find it meaningless. "I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure." Gold, horses, music, wine, women, he had it all. But instead of fulfillment, he found emptiness. The more he indulged, the further he drifted. What he once controlled began to control him. His heart, once steadfast, was now divided. The most dangerous part of his decline was how gradual it was. He did not wake up one morning and choose to turn away from God. It happened decision by decision, justification by justification. He ignored the warnings. He silenced the voice of conviction. And by the time he realized how far he had fallen, the damage was irreversible. His life serves as a sobering reminder. No one is immune to spiritual decline, not even the wisest man on earth. Pride, compromise, the need for approval, the allure of pleasure. All of these can slowly erode even the strongest foundation. The question we must ask ourselves is this: are we making the same mistakes? Are we allowing small compromises to take root in our hearts? If Solomon, with all his wisdom, could fall, how much more must we guard ourselves against the same fate? Be God's judgment on Solomon. As Solomon continued down his path of compromise and disobedience, the inevitable consequences of his actions began to unfold. The Lord, who had twice appeared to Solomon with clear warnings, now pronounced judgment upon the once great king. Solomon's divided heart had led not only to personal downfall, but also to the unraveling of the very kingdom he had built. 1 Kings 11:9-10 states, "The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command." Despite having unparalleled wisdom, Solomon had ignored the very foundation of his success, his covenant relationship with God. God's judgment was swift and severe. The Lord declared that the kingdom would be torn away from Solomon's descendants. However, out of respect for David, God showed mercy. Solomon would not witness the full extent of this judgment during his lifetime. Instead, it would be his son, Rehoboam, who would bear the consequences of his father's failures. 1 Kings 11:11-13. The first signs of this judgment became evident as adversaries rose against Solomon. Hadad the Edomite, a longtime enemy of Israel, returned with a thirst for revenge. 1 Kings 11:14-22. Rezon of Damascus, another rival, established a kingdom that would continually trouble Israel. 1 Kings 11:23-25. Most significantly, Jeroboam, one of Solomon's own officials, was chosen by God to lead 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. The prophet Ahijah met Jeroboam and tore his cloak into 12 pieces, symbolizing the coming division of Israel. 1 Kings 11:29-31. Despite these clear signs, Solomon made no effort to repent. Instead, he sought to kill Jeroboam in a desperate attempt to maintain control. 1 Kings 11:40. But the judgment of the Lord was already set in motion, and no earthly power could reverse it. Solomon's story is a tragic reminder that no amount of wisdom, wealth, or power can substitute for faithfulness to God. The very man who had written, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding," Proverbs 3:5, had failed to follow his own advice. As Solomon neared the end of his life, the weight of his choices became undeniable. The kingdom he had worked so hard to establish was already beginning to fracture. His legacy, once destined for greatness, was now overshadowed by regret and divine judgment. But what were Solomon's final thoughts? Did he realize too late the cost of his disobedience? And most importantly, what can we learn from his fall? Let's explore his final reflections and the lasting impact of his choices. The final moments of Solomon's life. As Solomon approached his final days, the weight of his choices bore down on him like never before. He had lived in unimaginable splendor, ruled with wisdom that surpassed all others, and achieved feats that would be remembered for generations. Yet, despite all his accomplishments, he found himself alone, reflecting on a life that had drifted away from its divine purpose. Solomon dies in isolation, without glory or joy. Once a great king, he is ultimately undone by his own temptations. The contrast between his glorious beginning and tragic end is stark, a sobering testament to the consequences of turning away from God. The grandeur of his palace, the treasures of his kingdom, and the adoration of the world could not silence the regret that now filled his heart. He had once walked in close fellowship with God, but compromise had led him astray. His many wives had drawn him toward foreign gods, and in his effort to please them, he had erected altars to idols that had no power to save him. He had sought fulfillment in wealth, pleasure, and achievements, yet in the end, he found himself empty. The words he would later write in Ecclesiastes now echoed through his mind. Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. Ecclesiastes 1:2. Despite the weight of his regret, there was a glimmer of realization. He understood, perhaps too late, that true fulfillment had never been in the power, wisdom, or riches he had accumulated. He had spent his life building an empire, only to realize that without God, it was all fleeting. In his final reflections, he penned these words, "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." Ecclesiastes 12:13. It was a stark acknowledgement that all else fades, but a life devoted to God remains the only pursuit of true worth. The kingdom Solomon had built was already showing signs of fracture, and though he would not live to see it completely divided, the consequences of his actions would be borne by his descendants. His son Rehoboam would inherit not just a throne, but a nation on the brink of collapse. The judgment of God was set in motion, and there was no turning back. Think about it. Solomon had everything the world could offer, yet in the end, what did it amount to? His wisdom, his riches, his power. All of it meant nothing when measured against eternity. His life serves as a powerful lesson. Even the greatest minds, the richest rulers, and the most influential leaders can lose their way if they allow pride and compromise to erode their faith. As Solomon drew his last breath, did he find peace in his final realization? Or was he tormented by the years he had wasted? We may never fully know. But his story serves as a sobering reminder. Wisdom, success, and even divine favor mean little if the heart is not steadfast in its devotion to God. Are we making the same mistakes? Are we chasing after things that will ultimately fade away, or are we building a foundation that will last for eternity? Solomon's life is a story of both great triumph and tragic failure, a stark reminder of the blessings that come with faithfulness and the dangers of turning away from God. He was given everything, wisdom beyond measure, wealth beyond comprehension, and power unmatched by any ruler of his time. Yet despite all he had, he lost sight of the very source of his success. His early years were marked by devotion. He built the temple, sought God's wisdom, and ruled with justice. But over time, small compromises led to catastrophic consequences. His pursuit of pleasure, his desire for approval, and his accumulation of wealth all contributed to his downfall. The very wisdom that once set him apart became clouded by his indulgences, and his heart drifted far from God. In the end, Solomon looked back on his life with deep regret. The man who had it all ultimately realized that nothing mattered apart from God. His words in Ecclesiastes serve as a solemn conclusion to his journey. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Ecclesiastes 12:13. It was a lesson learned too late for him, but not too late for us. Solomon's story challenges us to examine our own lives. Are we making the same mistakes? Are we allowing the pursuit of success, wealth, or approval to pull us away from what truly matters? His life teaches us that even the greatest wisdom is meaningless without obedience to God. Let us learn from his triumphs and his failures. Let us seek not just wisdom, but a heart that remains faithful. Because in the end, it is not what we build, what we achieve, or how much we gain that defines us. It is whether we remain steadfast in our devotion to the one who gave us everything. What are your thoughts on Solomon's journey? Have you ever experienced moments where success or distractions pulled you away from your faith? Share your insights in the comments below. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss future content. Let us know what biblical stories or life lessons you'd like us to cover next. We'd love to hear from you. But what exactly was it that elevated Solomon to become one of the most powerful and influential men ever to walk the face of the earth? Was it merely his wealth, his wisdom, or something far greater, something divinely bestowed? In the following sections, let us journey into the depths of each unique form of power that Solomon held. and uncover the profound legacy behind his extraordinary strength. Commanding demons. One of the most astonishing and perhaps unsettling aspects of Solomon's power was his ability to command demons. According to ancient traditions, Solomon didn't just acknowledge the existence of these spirits, he ruled over them. He could summon them, bind them, and force them to obey, not through sorcery, but through God's authority. The clearest record of this comes from a mysterious occult text known as the Lesser Key of Solomon. In it lies a section called the Ars Goetia, a catalogue of 72 demons, each with a name, a hierarchy, and a specific set of powers. They were structured, ranked, intelligent entities, kings, dukes, marquises, presidents of the infernal realm. The legend tells us that Solomon was given a ring by God, engraved with a holy seal, the Seal of Solomon. With it, he could control any demon he summoned, forcing them to carry out divine tasks. Some of these demons are still remembered today, even feared, such as Baal, a king with the heads of a man, a toad, and a cat who grants invisibility. Paimon, a crowned figure riding a camel, known for revealing secret knowledge. Asmodeus, with 3 monstrous heads and serpent feet, brings chaos, lust, and violence. Valak, a winged child riding a 2-headed dragon, uncovers hidden treasures and commands serpents. Astaroth, a fallen angel holding a viper, speaks dark truths and corrupts with knowledge. Beuer, a lion-faced 5-legged wheel, teaches medicine and philosophy. Belial, a fiery charioteer with a noble face, tempts with power but corrupts the soul. But here's what matters most. Solomon did not turn to darkness. He subjugated it. He used his power not for greed, but to establish order, to bend chaos toward divine purpose. Because for Solomon, true power was not about domination, but about alignment, turning even the forces of evil into servants of divine will. And demons weren't the only ones who submitted to him. There was another race, ancient, fiery, and far more elusive, the Jinn. Bind die Jinn. Now you may have heard of genies in bottles, wish-granting spirits trapped in lamps or jars. That popular image didn't come from fairy tales alone. In Islamic tradition, particularly in the Quran, Solomon granted by God the authority to controls over the jinn, beings made of smokeless fire created long before humanity. The jinn are not demons. They are sentient, spiritual creatures with free will, capable of belief, rebellion, and even worship. Some are righteous, others are wild and chaotic. And yet, Solomon had absolute authority over them. The Quran describes this power clearly. And to Solomon we subjected the wind and the jinn, every builder and diver, and others bound in chains. Surah Sad 38:36-38. According to tradition, Solomon commanded legions of jinn to labor for him. They built cities, temples, palaces, and even descended into the depths of the sea to retrieve treasures. Some crafted metals, others served in secrecy, carrying out unseen tasks across the kingdom. To the rebellious ones, he bound them in chains, locked them in vessels of brass or iron, and cast them into remote places, deserts, oceans, mountains. Some legends even claim Solomon sealed these spirits with his divine ring, imprisoning them for centuries. What made this so remarkable was not just the obedience of the jinn, but how they feared him. Not for his cruelty, but because they recognized that his power came from God. He was, in their eyes, a ruler of both worlds, the human and the spiritual. Even after his death, the jinn was said to keep working, unaware he had passed, until a small creature, known in some traditions as the shamir, gnawed through his staff and caused his body to collapse to the ground. Only then did they realize that Solomon was gone. But this creature, the shamir, was no ordinary insect. It wasn't just a silent witness to Solomon's death. It was also the key to one of his greatest achievements, the construction of the first temple. Using shamir. At first glance, it seems almost absurd that a king who commanded demons and jinn would rely on a tiny, almost invisible creature to fulfill one of his greatest divine missions. But that's exactly what the ancient texts tell us. The creature was called the Shamir, one of the 10 wonders created by God on the 6th day of creation, just before the first Sabbath. They are the tiny emerald green bugs which could eat stone, metal, and even diamond. There is no mortal material in this world can endure the power of Shamir. This power became essential when Solomon was commanded to build the first temple. God had forbidden iron tools in its construction. Weapons of war had no place in a house of peace. And so Solomon turned to the Shamir. But here's the twist. It was the demon Asmodeus, whom Solomon had once captured and questioned, who revealed the secret of the Shamir's existence. Only by mastering the dark arts could Solomon unlock this tool of divine precision. Under Solomon's command, the Shamir carved the temple stones in perfect silence. No hammer, no chisel, just sacred obedience. The Shamir was volatile. It destroyed any ordinary container, so Solomon had it stored in a special magic box, resistant to its power. According to tradition, that box disappeared after the first temple was destroyed, and has never been found since. And long after the temple was built, the Shamir appeared one final time. It was this same creature that gnawed through Solomon's staff as he stood motionless in death, revealing to the jinn that their master had already passed. The creature that helped build God's house also exposed the moment when Solomon's time on earth was finished. A small, silent force, trusted with both the king's highest work and his final fall. But if the Shamir was an instrument of obedience, then Solomon's greatest gift, the one power that shaped every other, was his divine wisdom. Wisdom. One of the most iconic stories from King Solomon's reign begins in the quiet anguish grief of two mothers. According to the Book of Kings, the women lived in the same house. They each had newborn sons. They shared the same roof, and perhaps the same man. Then one night, tragedy struck. One of the infants died in his sleep, accidentally smothered when his mother rolled over him. Overcome by sorrow, or perhaps envy, she rose in the darkness, crept to the other woman's bed, and switched the babies. She laid the lifeless child beside the other mother, and took the living one as her own. By morning, the deception was complete. They fought, they cried, and eventually they stood before the king. Each insisted, "The living child is mine. The dead one belongs to her." No witnesses, no proof, just pain, and the word of one desperate woman against another. And then Solomon spoke, "Bring me a sword. Cut the living child in two. Give each woman half." The room must have gone cold. One woman stood silent, but the other cried out in horror, "No, my lord, give her the child, just don't kill him." Why would a mother give up her own child so easily? Because a real mother would rather see her child live without her than die beside her. Because love, in its truest form, is willing to let go. if that's the only way to protect his life. And Solomon turned and said, "She is the true mother." That moment became legend, because it wasn't just cleverness. It was something deeper, discernment, a divine wisdom that saw through appearances and went straight to the heart. Out of all the powers Solomon possessed over demons, jinn, the winds and the shamir, this was the one that truly set him apart. The ability to judge not just what people do, but who they are. Scripture says God offered Solomon anything: riches, conquest, glory. And he asked only for an understanding heart. So God gave him everything else. Solomon's rule wasn't founded merely on might, but on truth, justice, and a wisdom that could only have come from heaven. And that wisdom extended even further into the language of birds, beasts, and all living things. Speak to animals and plants. Wisdom for Solomon wasn't limited to people. His understanding reached beyond courts and thrones, into the very fabric of creation. The Quran tells us that Solomon was given a gift few could comprehend, the ability to understand the speech of animals. And Solomon inherited David, and he said, "O people, we have been taught the language of birds, and we have been given from all things. Indeed, this is a clear favor." Surah An-Naml 27:16. He didn't just command armies. He could listen to the flutter of wings, the whisper of insects, the murmur of creatures most people never notice. One story from the Quran tells of Solomon marching with his hosts, soldiers, men, and jinn. When they passed through a valley of giant ants, the murderous ants that each one were described to seem bigger than a dog. As the army approached, one ant cried out, "O ants, enter your dwellings, lest Solomon and his armies crush you without realizing it." And Solomon heard her. He smiled, not out of pride, but gratitude. Gratitude that God had allowed him to hear the voice of even the smallest of creatures and understand their fear, their instinct, their world. In Jewish mystical tradition, it said Solomon had learned the language of the trees, that he could interpret the cries of birds, the rustle of leaves, even the thoughts of animals. Some stories claim he knew the divine language, the original tongue of creation, the language God used to speak the universe into existence. This wasn't just a party trick, it was a sacred connection. Solomon didn't dominate nature, he listened to it. He walked among the living world, not as its ruler, but as its translator. In a world where kings command through force, Solomon ruled through understanding. He knew that knowledge is not only found in books or scrolls, but also in the song of birds, the warning of ants, the breath of trees. But God's power gave to Solomon didn't just end with commanding the animals and plants. He also gave Solomon dominion over one of the most untamable forces in nature, the wind itself. Because when Solomon lifted his hand, even the sky would answer. Control the winds. According to the Quran, God granted Solomon a power that no king before or after him would ever possess, control over the very breath of the earth. Winds that could span miles in minutes, winds that could carry voices, thrones, even armies. And we subjected to Solomon the wind. Its morning course was a month, and its evening course a month. Surah Saba 34:12. The scriptures say the wind would bend to his will. At a word, Solomon's throne could rise into the sky and travel over vast kingdoms in the blink of an eye. No ship, no road, just air itself, harnessed by the one man trusted with its command. Some traditions describe his airborne throne, surrounded by jinn and birds in flight, moving like a celestial caravan across the horizon. He would appear in distant lands without warning, not as an invader, but as a messenger of divine justice. But the wind was not just a vehicle. It was a servant, a spy, a force of judgment. It could carry whispers to his ears. It could level cities or bring rain to barren lands. In Jewish legend, the wind itself feared him, because Solomon didn't just speak to the skies, he was heard by them. And yet with all this might, the question returns, how? How could one man wield such control over jinn, animals, judgment, and now even the heavens? What was the source of that authority? It was something he wore on his finger, something small but divine. A ring. The Ring of Solomon. Solomon's powers were vast. He commanded demons, jinn, the wind, animals, even the language of creation itself. But many say all those powers were anchored in one object, his ring, the seal of Solomon, engraved with a divine mark, often a six-pointed star, and said to be gifted by God or the archangel Michael. The ring allowed Solomon to bind spirits, seal vessels, and speak to the unseen. It became the foundation of Western occultism. Grimoires, magical seals, talismans, and mystical traditions all trace their roots back to this single symbol, the mark of a man who ruled both visible and invisible realms. But one question still haunts history. What became of the ring after Solomon died? Some say it was lost, others say it was hidden, not just to protect the ring itself, but to guard what it could unlock. Because beyond the demons and the wind, there was something far more dangerous, a place of secrets, a hidden library said to contain the knowledge of creation itself, and only the ring could open the door. The hidden library. Long after the temple was built, after the demons were bound, the winds silenced and the throne stood empty beneath the weight of time, there remained one final secret, hidden not in stone or ritual, but in silence: the library. In traditions scattered across Judaism, Islam, and later Western mysticism, there are whispers of a collection, not of scrolls or sacred hymns, but of knowledge so profound, so complete, that it was said to hold the very patterns of creation. This was not a library in the way we imagine. It was a chamber of divine intelligence reserved for a man whose heart had been tested and whose mind had touched the boundaries between heaven and earth. Inside were the true names of angels, sound keys that could bend spiritual realms. There were diagrams said to map the structure of the heavens, formulas that governed the natural world, and inscriptions in a tongue no mortal had ever spoken. Some called it the Book of Raziel. Others referred to it simply as the Heavenly Archive, but all sources agree. The knowledge within it was not meant for mankind. It was a responsibility, one too heavy for kings, too sacred for priests. And yet Solomon, bearing the seal and the favor of God, was permitted to read. Some traditions say the library was hidden beneath the Temple Mount, locked behind invisible gates that only he could open. Others claim the texts were written in light, viewable only to those without pride or hunger for power. Whatever its form, its existence terrified even the angels. For this was no longer knowledge, but the raw code of reality. After Solomon's death, the library vanished. Whether buried, taken by angels, or lost to time, no one has found it since. And perhaps that's the point, because this was not just a vault of wisdom. It was the final boundary between divine truth and human limitation. And only one man, a king, a prophet, a servant of heaven, was ever trusted to cross it. Now that we've walked through the life and legends of Solomon, his power over demons, over jinn, over wind and earth, over judgment and wisdom itself, perhaps it's time to ask a different question. What if those powers had been given to you? What would happen if you held in your hand a ring that could command the spirits, a key to knowledge that angels feared, and a voice that all of creation obeyed? Would you use it to serve, or would you slowly begin to serve yourself? Even Solomon, the one man entrusted with such divine authority, did not end his story in triumph. Scripture tells us that his heart turned, that pride crept in through the very gifts he was given, and in the end, the kingdom fractured as his soul grew distant from the God who had once chosen him. So perhaps the question has never really been how powerful Solomon was. The real question is whether anyone, any king, any prophet, any one of us could carry that much power and still remain whole. And if not, what does that say about us? If this story moved something in you, if it opened a door of wonder or reverence or caution, then stay with us. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we continue uncovering the sacred, the hidden, and the nearly forgotten. Among all the powers that Solomon possessed, perhaps the most terrifying of them all was his dominion over demons. Not just one, but 72 of them, each with its own dreadful might. These were not mere spirits, but formidable entities that once roamed freely, now bound by the authority of a single man. In the following passages, we will explore 10 of the most powerful demons that were forced to kneel before him, revealing the extent of Solomon's unparalleled command over the spiritual realm. Baal. Baal is one of the most powerful and first demons summoned and controlled by King Solomon from the 72 demons. His name, sometimes written as Baal, originates from an ancient Semitic word meaning Lord or God. In Western esoteric traditions, Baal is often described as a demon with control over natural elements and supernatural phenomena. In the famous Lesser Key of Solomon, Ars Goetia, Baal is depicted as one of the first 7 demon kings, possessing 3 heads: a human head, a toad's head, and a cat's head. His appearance symbolizes his dominion over desire and darkness. Baal's abilities include granting invisibility and allowing the summoner to pass through physical barriers. He can also control minds, manipulate others, and assist in devising strategic plans, particularly in battle. Baal commands 66 legions of demons, showcasing his immense military power within the demonic hierarchy. In the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, an influential 15th century grimoire, Baal is referenced as a demon who can be summoned in certain rituals for influence and power. Historically, the name Baal or Baal originates from Canaanite and Phoenician cultures, where he was worshipped as a god of storms, rain, and fertility. However, in Jewish and biblical traditions, Baal associated with idolatry and false gods. In the Bible, Baal represents corruption, temptation, and idol worship. The evolution of Baal from a revered god to a symbol of evil reflects his transformation in mysticism, from a god of power to a demonic force in the Ars Goetia. Now, let's move on to another powerful demon in Solomon's list, Paimon, a king of great influence and knowledge. Paimon is one of the most powerful demon kings in the 72 demons of Solomon. Known as the demon of knowledge, creativity, and music, Paimon is often summoned by those seeking wisdom or assistance in matters of intellect, art, and enlightenment. While he can grant extraordinary abilities to his summoner, Paimon is also a dangerous entity if misused or left unchecked. In the Lesser Key of Solomon, Ars Goetia, Paimon is depicted as one of the most formidable demon kings, possessing immense power. His appearance is described as dignified and commanding. He is often seen riding a camel, surrounded by spirits and minions. Despite having a human-like form, Paimon is depicted with a unique head, sometimes resembling a king, with his presence accompanied by light and other supernatural phenomena. Paimon's abilities are centered around granting knowledge and assisting with intellectual endeavors. He helps his summoners solve philosophical, scientific, and artistic problems. His influence extends to shaping thoughts and perceptions, enabling individuals to gain wisdom and talent in a variety of fields, including music, philosophy, and even the sciences. As the ruler of 26 legions of demons, Paimon holds significant military and intellectual power within the demonic hierarchy. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage connects demon kings like Paimon with rituals used to achieve personal or political objectives, highlighting his influence in both esoteric and mundane matters. Paimon's pursuit of wisdom and mastery over the intellectual realm might seem at odds with the darker powers that lurk within Solomon's list of demons. Yet, as we move on, we encounter Asmodeus, a demon whose influence over desire, lust, and temptation proves that not all knowledge comes without its dark price. Asmodeus is one of the most infamous and powerful demons in the 72 Demons of Solomon, and his legend is both chilling and complex. According to the ancient texts, Asmodeus was one of the most powerful demons that King Solomon summoned and controlled to aid in the construction of the Temple of Jerusalem. Known as the demon of lust and desire, Asmodeus is deeply intertwined with the darker aspects of human nature. In the Lesser Key of Solomon, Ars Goetia, Asmodeus is depicted as a terrifying demon with 3 heads, one of a man, one of a bull, and one of a ram, symbolizing his control over desire, passion, and the chaotic forces of human lust. However, one of the most famous stories about Asmodeus involves his attempt to deceive and steal from Solomon. According to the Testament of Solomon, Asmodeus, in his quest for power, tricks Solomon into giving up his magical ring, the source of his control over demons. Asmodeus lures him into a false sense of security and manipulates the king into handing over the ring. Once Solomon is without his ring, he loses his dominion over the demons, and Asmodeus rebels, causing chaos and strife. This trickery is one of the pivotal moments in the Testament of Solomon. Solomon, without his ring, is left vulnerable and must rely on his wisdom to regain control. Ultimately, Solomon outsmarts Asmodeus, regains the ring, and binds him back into submission. In the Testament of Solomon, Asmodeus is also said to have helped Solomon build the temple by influencing the workers, though he caused tremendous discord and chaos among them. Asmodeus controls 72 legions of demons, showcasing his immense power and influence. He is not only a demon of lust and temptation, but also one of deception and betrayal, making him a key figure in both ancient demonology and popular culture. Yet, Asmodeus's tricks and lustful manipulations were just the beginning of Solomon's struggles. Moving forward, we encounter Astaroth, another demon of immense power and a master of knowledge and wisdom, whose influence has permeated throughout history. Astaroth is one of the most fascinating and complex demons within the 72 Demons of Solomon, renowned for his immense knowledge and authority. Known as the demon of knowledge, wisdom, and destruction, Astaroth holds a prominent place in both occult traditions and biblical lore. In the lesser key of Solomon, Ars Goetia, Astaroth is described as a grand duke with the ability to bestow knowledge and intellectual power upon those who summon him. He appears in the form of a deformed angel, often depicted with fiery breath, a serpent around his waist, and riding a beast that is said to be surrounded by flames. Astaroth is a demon of wisdom, deeply associated with occult knowledge and hidden secrets. Summoners call upon him to gain insight into the mysteries of the universe, the secrets of the past, and even glimpses of the future. Those who seek Astaroth's counsel are often granted the ability to understand philosophy, alchemy, and the arts of divination. He is a powerful demon who can help one gain deep wisdom, but this comes with a heavy price, as his destructive nature and influence over the human soul can lead to temptation and corruption. In addition to his intellectual prowess, Astaroth is said to rule over South America, a region where his influence is particularly strong. His dominance over this part of the world is reflected in the occult practices and the voodoo rituals that often seek his power. Astaroth's influence is believed to be most potent in the month of August, when his energy peaks, making it an ideal time for those who wish to seek his wisdom or invoke his power. During this month, his ability to grant knowledge or manipulate the mind of others is at its height. Astaroth is also often seen as the antithesis of Saint Bartholomew. In Christian tradition, Saint Bartholomew is a patron of truth, honesty, and spiritual salvation. In contrast, Astaroth embodies deception, corruption, and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge, making them natural enemies in the eternal struggle between good and evil. Where Saint Bartholomew seeks to reveal divine truth, Astaroth conceals the truth, leading souls down paths of temptation and despair. As a demon of immense knowledge, Astaroth's insights can be incredibly valuable, yet his teachings often come with dangerous consequences, making him a demon of paradoxes, capable of both enlightenment and destruction. Yet, as we venture deeper into the realm of Solomon's demons, we encounter Bua, a demon whose healing powers and ability to cure mental ailments sharply contrast with Astaroth's mastery over destructive knowledge and desire. Let's explore the dual nature of power, where wisdom meets restoration. Bua is one of the more unique demons in the 72 demons of Solomon, known for his healing abilities and his role in mental clarity and spiritual wisdom. In the lesser key of Solomon, Ars Goetia, Bua is described as a great president of hell who commands 50 legions. He is depicted with a lion's head and 5 goat legs, symbolizing his power over the elements and his ability to move swiftly. Unlike many demons in Solomon's list, Bua is a demon of healing, particularly sought by those who need help with mental ailments or physical illnesses. He is also known for his wisdom, aiding those who wish to understand philosophy and spiritual truths. His association with herbal remedies and natural healing makes him a figure of knowledge in the occult. Bua's calming influence contrasts with the destructive nature of other demons like Asmodeus and Paimon. He is often invoked by those seeking balance and relief from psychological pain, making him a demon who brings restoration and clarity rather than chaos and temptation. However, not all demons in Solomon's list bring healing. Belial, a demon of power and corruption, stands in stark contrast to Bua's restorative nature, making his influence far more dangerous. Let's delve into the story of Belial, a demon whose thirst for power and control reshapes the very foundation of societies. Belial. Belial is one of the most powerful and notorious demons in the 72 demons of Solomon, but his role is more complex than simply being the opposite of God. According to the Book of Jubilees, Belial is not inherently rebellious against God, but is portrayed as carrying out evil deeds by God's command. This means he is not a figure who acts on his own accord in defiance of the divine. Rather, he serves a higher purpose within God's greater plan. In this context, Belial is depicted as a being who enacts corruption and chaos, but he does so under divine direction, serving a role in the divine order that might be incomprehensible to human understanding. In the Book of Jubilees, Belial is described as a spirit of lawlessness who leads people into sin and lawlessness, but his actions are still considered to be part of the divine structure. He is not the rogue agent of chaos, but rather a figure that carries out God's will in the realm of evil, demonstrating that even evil forces are part of the larger cosmic order. In the Book of Exodus, Belial is said to have given power to 2 Egyptian magicians who oppose Moses and Pharaoh. These magicians, empowered by Belial, perform miracles to challenge Moses' divine authority. This shows that Belial not only symbolizes evil and corruption, but also possesses the ability to grant power and manipulate events, particularly for those seeking to defy divine authority. This dual role of Belial, as both a servant of divine will and a demon of corruption, is what makes him so unique in the context of demonology. His ability to provide power to both the righteous and the wicked is a key element in understanding his influence in the demonic hierarchy. While Belial represents the corrupting force of lawlessness, Dantalion offers a stark contrast as a demon of knowledge and intellectual manipulation. Let's explore Dantalion, a demon who controls minds and guides those seeking wisdom, but at what cost? Dantalion. Dantalion is one of the more intriguing demons in the 72 demons of Solomon, known for his command over emotions, thoughts, and psychological influence. In the Ars Goetia, he is listed as a duke who rules over 36 legions of demons. His abilities revolve around mind control, emotional manipulation, and the ability to see into the hearts of those around him. He is often depicted with many faces, symbolizing his power to understand diverse perspectives and manipulate people at their core. Dantalion can change how people feel, alter their opinions, and sway decisions, making him extremely dangerous in the hands of those seeking to manipulate others for personal or political gain. Beyond manipulation, Dantalion is also a demon of wisdom. He can grant deep insight into human behavior, help navigate complex situations, and offer guidance in philosophy and strategy. However, his knowledge comes with a price. Those who rely on him too heavily may lose touch with morality, reality, or even their own identity. He is particularly powerful in strategic manipulation, often guiding his summoner to orchestrate outcomes that seem organic, but are entirely calculated. In esoteric traditions, he is both teacher and tempter, offering truth wrapped in shadows. Dantalion does not destroy through brute force, but by undermining trust, shifting perception, and breaking down psychological defenses. His influence is subtle but lasting, and those who summon him walk a fine line between insight and obsession. But while Dantalion rules the inner workings of the mind, the next demon, Andrialphus, manipulates the very structure of reality itself, twisting form, teaching forbidden geometry, and transforming both spirit and flesh. Andrialphus. Alphus is a lesser-known yet uniquely powerful Marquis among the 72 demons of Solomon, commanding 30 legions of demons. He is revered for his mastery of geometry, astronomy, and transformation, and is notable for his influence not only on the mind, like Dantalion, but on the structure of reality itself. In the Ars Goetia, he first appears as a majestic peacock, a symbol of beauty, cosmic symmetry, pride, and illusion. Later, he takes on a human form, speaking with eloquence and depth on topics such as measurement, celestial mechanics, and the hidden harmonics that govern both the physical world and magical systems. His most enigmatic ability is his power to transform humans into birds, a symbolic act interpreted as spiritual ascent, escape, or even madness. This makes him a demon of shifting form and perception, often invoked by practitioners of high magic who seek to understand dimensional structure, sacred architecture, or the mathematics behind existence. Alphus is not a demon of temptation or destruction in the typical sense. He does not seduce through lust or fear, but through abstract beauty, mathematical purity, and the haunting allure of forbidden knowledge. However, his teachings carry inherent risk. Paradoxes, illusion, and intellectual disorientation threaten those who pursue his truths too recklessly. For those bold enough to summon him, Alphus offers a glimpse into the blueprint of creation, but the price is often a fractured sense of reality. Yet while Alphus reveals the universe's hidden harmonies, the next demon embodies chaos, violence, and betrayal. Glaciolabolus does not teach. He destroys, whispering death and discord into every heart he touches. Glaciolabolus. Glaciolabolus is one of the most fearsome and volatile spirits in the 72 demons of Solomon, known as a president and mighty Earl of Hell, who commands 36 legions of demons. In the Ars Goetia, he is described as appearing in the form of a dog with the wings of a griffin, symbolizing his feral, unpredictable nature and his dominion over both earthly violence and spiritual treachery. Unlike demons who grant knowledge or transformation, Glaciolabolus is invoked for his power to stir conflict, incite bloodshed, and manipulate loyalties. He is said to be capable of making men invisible, but more infamously, he can cause love between enemies and hatred between allies, a master of betrayal. Those who summon him often seek victory in battle, sabotage, or to destroy the unity of their rivals from within. In occult traditions, he is not just a bringer of violence, but a demon of secret murders, political coups, and spiritual corruption. He whispers deceit into loyal hearts and twists the bonds of trust and kinship, turning harmony into chaos. Glaciolabolus thrives where order weakens and thrives even more when blood is spilled for ambition's sake. He's also said to possess a dark wisdom. He teaches the art of murder, the psychology of war, and the hidden motives behind human cruelty. Yet, unlike demons of knowledge, such as Paimon or Alphus, his teachings do not elevate, they devour. To invoke Glaciolabolus is to invite a blade into the soul of a cause, a relationship, or a kingdom. He does not ask for worship, only that you allow him to unravel what others have built. But not all demons strike with war and treachery. Some tear apart hearts not with swords, but with storms of passion and chaos. Furfur is one such spirit, a deceiver cloaked in thunder, whose dominion is not over battlefields, but over the tempests of love and madness. Furfur is a great Earl of Hell, commanding 26 legions of demons, and one of the most volatile figures in the 72 demons of Solomon. In the Ars Goetia, he appears as a fiery winged stag, a creature both majestic and untamed. However, he is known to lie unless compelled into a properly drawn magical triangle, whereupon he assumes a human form and speaks truthfully. This trait marks him as a demon of both chaos and concealed danger. Furfur's domain lies in the stormy world of emotion, particularly love, lust, jealousy, and madness. He is often summoned to provoke passion, break relationships, or turn affection into obsession. Unlike demons who grant enlightenment or knowledge, Furfur offers raw, overwhelming emotion without restraint. His influence causes hearts to burn, often until they consume themselves. Beyond human feelings, Furfur also commands thunder, lightning, and violent storms. His tempests are not just physical. They mirror the emotional turmoil he spreads. Where he moves, calm is shattered, and intensity takes its place. Some occultists invoke him for weather magic, but more commonly, he is sought in desperate attempts to force love, rekindle desire, or cause romantic destruction. His powers are seductive but dangerous. The feelings he stirs are not genuine. They are amplified illusions, fragile and often explosive. Those who turn to Furfur for help may find themselves trapped in the very chaos they unleashed. Furfur is not a subtle manipulator, nor a patient teacher. He is a force of unpredictable intensity, a storm in the shape of a spirit. To summon him is to invite passion without peace, and truth wrapped in violent beauty. The 72 demons of Solomon represent more than chaos. They reflect the deep moral and spiritual struggles found throughout Scripture. From Baal's deception to Paimon's temptation of knowledge, each demon echoes the warnings found in the Bible about the dangers of pride, lust, and the misuse of power. Their stories serve as stark reminders of the unseen battles between good and evil. If you found this exploration insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more Bible-based content that dives into its history, mysteries, and the spiritual truths often hidden between the lines.